Hello there. You might be wondering why I'm dressed like this. It's because it is time for another episode of Orange Truth Archetypes. And on this episode, I'll be looking at the TV show Sherlock. Specifically, I'll be looking at the man in the funny hat himself, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. I'll analyze his character traits and personality, and based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, assigning him his specific archetype. The game's afoot. Let's get started. To begin with, we have the ruler archetype. Now, Sherlock's whole mentality focuses on what is and what isn't, but this isn't equivalent to actually following the rules. He breaks a number of social norms because he doesn't care and doesn't acknowledge their meaning, but I question whether or not he is actually oblivious to them or not. After all, he is a master of social manipulation and imitating someone that actually cares. For him, the only laws he follows are the laws of physics and nature. He relies on facts and figures and logic to determine what is literally right and wrong. But like the ruler, he believes himself to be superior to almost everyone. And he so often wishes that other people would be on his intellectual level so things wouldn't be as boring. But Sherlock often gets away many times with breaking the rules because he knows that he's a necessity in most situations. Because of this, I don't think he's much of a ruler because he doesn't choose to follow the rules or believe in them. And even he admits that sometimes the most unbreakable rules can be bent. Because of this, I don't think the ruler is a good fit for him. And the next one on the list is the jester archetype. Now, Sherlock isn't really known for being the comedian, but he is known for being witty and quick thinking. The jester isn't a planner, nor thinks ahead, and like a game of chess, Sherlock is constantly thinking 10 to 100 moves ahead. Plus, he's more focused on the goal, usually solving the puzzle, than he is on the journey, but he does enjoy the game nonetheless. However, the jester is also known for looking at different points of view, and I think Sherlock looks at literally every point of view in order to figure out people's murderous intentions. He likes being in the spotlight, and is a master of forming ideas, and is very impulsive and unrestrained. To be honest, I don't think even the entire English government, aka his brother, has complete control of him. So while he does show some jester qualities, I wouldn't declare him a jester quite yet. Next up, the hardworking, the honest, the everyman, which is not something I associate with Sherlock. The man doesn't do any work unless he deems it entertaining or absolutely necessary. I'm pretty sure this guy wouldn't eat if it wasn't inquisitive to his survival.
Don't eat when I'm working, digesting slows me down.
Nor does he have any desire to fit in. Like I said before, he enjoys being in the spotlight. He doesn't have lots of friends, as he's made clear throughout the series, just a few good ones, and is not a traditionalist. Then again, he also doesn't value status, greatness, or other grandiose things, but I think he enjoys this because it annoys his brother. But I think overall, his lone wolf personality and tendency to belittle everyone shows that he's not trying to be mainstream. Thus, the everyman is clearly not a good fit for him. And to be honest, neither is the next one, the caregiver. But let's not be too quick to judge. There are a few moments in the series that hints at Sherlock actually having a heart. He picks his moments and does show some emotion at times. He's got a special place for Mrs. Hudson, his love interest Irene Adler, the innocent Miss Molly Hooper, and even good old Inspector Lestrade. He's also got some kind of brotherly love for Mycroft, and he even comes around to his sister Euros, who tried to destroy him. And we all know he's got a soft spot for John. But don't worry, ladies, he's not gay. However, while he does enjoy coming to the rescue, he doesn't really care what happens to other people.
Sentiment is a chemical defect found in the losing side.
He constantly wreaks havoc on John's love life and enjoys embarrassing others.
Brilliant, Anderson.
Really?
Yes, brilliant impression of an idiot.
In one scene, when Sherlock is actually giving a toast, he admits that while he's the one that solves the crimes, it takes John Watson to save your life. I think this really goes to show where Sherlock sees others and where he sees himself. This is no surprise, but I don't think Sherlock is the caregiver. Next up is the hero. Now, once again, Sherlock enjoys saving the day, but he doesn't really concern himself with the victims. Don't get me wrong, he makes them feel safe at first, but he also doesn't really acknowledge them or their appreciation unless they are useful. His approach to solving problems is also far from direct. He loves a good roundabout and confusing situation that would make the average hero lose his mind. Plus, the hero also gets his strength when other people succeed. And Sherlock, again, really doesn't involve himself in most people's lives outside of the crime scene.
Don't make people into heroes, John. Heroes don't exist, and if they did, I wouldn't be one of them.
And while he does want the best for John and Mary, he doesn't really see the point in certain aspects of their lives. So, is Sherlock a hero?
I'm not a hero. I'm a high-functioning sociopath. Merry Christmas!
Well, I think there's your answer right there. So while not a hero, he may fit into this next one, the revolutionary. So let's see if this one fits. Like the revolutionary, Sherlock does have a somewhat negative view on society. He's a natural pessimistic that is almost entirely personally driven. He knows people lie and surrounds himself with the worst kind of people in his work. He also wants to be respected by others because of his intellect. However, he's not big picture. Not only because he's a detective that has to concern himself with the little details, but he was more concerned with cases that are more entertaining than important. This archetype would be a perfect fit for him, except he doesn't have the key element, a desire for change, either himself or externally. He doesn't go about trying to change the world around him. In fact, whenever a big change in his environment does change, i.e. not having John, he wasn't a fan. After all, the guy likes it when his books collect dust. Talk about not wanting to change. So perhaps this archetype is a better fit. The outlaw. Now, Sherlock does have a tendency to go outside the law when it comes to solving his cases. Whether it's breaking and entering, stealing, or doing drugs, Sherlock does whatever it takes to solve the case. And again, he's not very trusting and expects the worst in people. He also loves to rebel against authority, the biggest being his big brother, again, literally, the British government. But let's not forget that he is on the side of the angels and helps the police when they ask, and sometimes even if they don't. He's a master of his own fate and acknowledges the usefulness of violence. His level of being near impossible to control and belief that the ends always justify the means is going to make the outlaw a pretty tough one to beat. But perhaps this next one can put up a good fight. The magician. Now, the TV series might be over, but Sherlock isn't. His arch nemesis may have been defeated, but that doesn't mean there won't be another criminal mastermind out there for Sherlock to outwit. Within the series, we see Sherlock go from a lone wolf to running with a pack. To Sherlock, he increases his capabilities by having friends. Where he once saw them as unnecessary distractions, he now finds use in their existence. Plus, we know that Sherlock is the one that pushes John into danger, and pretty much everyone around him gets wrapped up in his adventures in some way or another. Not to mention, his use of the Mind Palace and being a deep thinker makes this archetype very fitting. We have the next archetype, the Sage. And like any great teacher, Sherlock loves to explain things. He puts himself in positions in which he is clearly the superior mind that has to get down on others' level, and his level of intellect is matched only by his massive ego.
It's pointless, you'll never find him, but I know a man who can.
Who?
Me.
There are only a handful of people that can really challenge him in terms of his intellect, and he does treat everyone around him like a student.
Works surprisingly well, though. I actually thought he was improving.
Sherlock just has a kind of tough love methodology. He looks down on others due to their lack of knowledge with a cocky and mean attitude, but I do think he believes that everyone does at least have the potential to be on his intellectual level. However, while he does love learning and knowing things, he gets even greater pleasure from solving the puzzle and overcoming the problem. And he does utilize what he learns in the real world, and needs his fix for complications and bizarre enigmas. So while you might think it's not the perfect fit, it is worth considering. And now we have the innocent. Now, despite his cocky, rude, and overbearing personality, this one might be more fitting than you think. For starters, he's the middle child, which I think explains a lot of his personality right there. Constantly trying to prove himself better than his domineering older brother that looks down on him. We also know that in terms of his personality, Sherlock enjoys a touch of the dramatics. Not to mention, he is not the all-knowing and impressive being he may try to be. I think we really see some of Sherlock's humanity when it's realized that he didn't know that the Earth revolved around the sun. However, he acknowledges the fact that he is oblivious in some ways. In the episode with the Abominable Bride, Sherlock's mind goes entirely into a world that he creates, in which he intentionally makes himself oblivious to the fact that Mr. Hooper is actually a woman, which goes to show that he acknowledges the fact that he is oblivious in some ways, which is why he needs John. Not to mention, as the series goes on, we see that Sherlock is not the cold, heartless, illogical being he portrays as. And at the very least, he's honest, and if you think about it, pretty forgiving. He's straightforward and doesn't hold grudges. In other words, let's not be so quick to judge. We're not all Sherlock after all. Next on the list is the creator archetype. Now, Sherlock has such a high opinion of himself that he went ahead and created his own occupation just for him.
I'm a consulting detective. The only one in the world that invented the job.
And like the creator, Sherlock's massive intellect and mind palace makes him iconic and different, and the funny hat makes his image stand out, even though he doesn't really like it. But maybe he does, secretly. He enjoys being in the spotlight, but doesn't necessarily crave or seek out attention. However, his ability to see one isolated criminal act and create an entire network of a massive conspiracy full of interlocking victims and motives shows that he doesn't just solve the puzzle. He does it with his own dramatic flair. And now, without further ado, we move on to the last one, the Explorer. Now, Sherlock may seem to have his sights in order and his priorities in place, but does he really? Like any addict, he has mixed driving forces. Sometimes it's the stimulation of a drug, other times it's the stimulation of a good serial killer or blackmailer. And even though he claims to only use logic and rationale, he can't deny that he does have motivations in other areas. He falls apart when Mary dies and John leaves. It has a soft spot for Irene Adler, and even Moriarty has a, shall we say, special spot in Sherlock's mind palace. He wants to be himself, but isn't focused on self-discovery. He knows, or at least thinks he knows, how he works.
I'm a high-functioning sociopath.
High-functioning sociopath.
I'm a high-functioning sociopath.
A dragon slayer. Is that what you think of me?
No. It's what you think of yourself.
With an analytical mindset that is always ready and needy for the next adventure, literally. He's the scholarly type, curious, and above all, clever.
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 Clever. Clever.
To sound clever. I'm clever.
Well, it's time, and I think most of you will agree with my decision, but I deduce that based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, Sherlock Holmes is the magician. It's no surprise that the archetype that's based entirely around transforming and being smart is associated with Sherlock, but let me explain. Sherlock really grows up from being a childish drama queen throwing tantrums to an adult with his own responsibilities. He really gains some perspective throughout his cases. In The Hounds of Baskerville, Sherlock learns that he can experience fear. Irene Adler shows him that he does in fact have a heart. And Euros taught him about humility and that there are many things that are more important in this world than being smart. Through each episode, his emotions grew stronger, indicating a transformation, which again, is what the magician is all about. Now, be sure to comment down below if you agree or disagree and explain why. And also let me know what other shows and characters you would like to see me analyze and possibly dress up for. And also be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and remember, stay concentrated.